Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today I am super excited because I am joined by the fabulous JB LaRee, and she is the author of the Runaway Heart series. I just read Run to Me and I featured it for my Meltdown Monday. So if you haven't seen that reel, definitely check it out because it'll give you all the vibes of the book. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
I'm so excited. That book is literally living rent-free in my brain. Like, I loved it so much.
Thank you. I love hearing that. It's always nice to know that a book sticks with you, especially for a new author, that the readers are like, it's there, it's stuck. I'm going to think about this for a long time. So that's always really
Yes.
great to hear.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did you come up with the premise of these books in this series?
I have always taken songs to a different level in my head. And I grew up with music, and I just would extend those songs beyond into stories in my head. And that's really what I do with most of the stories that I write. So a song inspired book one and book two. And I just feel like if I don't have that inspiration song, there's no story there. So
Mhm.
that's really where the premise of it comes from. For Run to Me, for example, the song that inspired the book, it just was so heartfelt and deep. And I just thought, who besides yourself can you run to when you're in need? And for Maisie and Jensen, that's each other. So I just, yeah, it's music. Music is
Yeah.
my premise point.
Oh, I love that. So how did you come up with the location for the story? Did you travel to that area, or is it similar to like where you live?
Well, I'm from Texas originally. I grew up there, lived there until about 5 years ago. So the area in Texas where the story is based, I'm not from that area, but it's a very pretty area. And I just thought it would be a neat location for a fictional town. Yeah. And plus, my husband kind of grew up in that general region of the state. So I've been there enough that I know the landscape and everything else. So I just made up a town and stuck it in there, and that's
Yeah, that's really great. I love the small town vibe. Love the like close knit found family that
yes.
small towns have.
Yes.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
most of the time, yes. There are those, certain areas that not, but
They
most
can
of the
have
time it
their
seems like they're like
they
a
have their
tight knit
problems.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with your writing, did you create like I know you had the song as kind of like the catalyst, but do you do like a mood board or do you do like outlining like pantser versus plotter?
I am definitely a pantser or a discovery writer, and it took me it the first book I wrote, All I Want, I wrote it so fast because it just came out of me. I let the characters just run away. And the second book I actually outlined, Run to Me, I outlined completely. And it took me forever to finish to me because I kept getting so stuck because I felt confined. I was boxed in by this outline.
Hmm.
And after the book published, I looked back and I was like, what did I do different? Why was it so frustrating? Why was it so hard to get through? And it was the outline. So I know now, don't outline. I've got the plot points figured out, the major plot points figured out for the stories, but just let the characters do their thing, and it goes so much faster for me.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you without getting any spoilers because I you can't be spoiled to read this book. Like you have to read it going in blind because that makes it so much better. But with the plot twist that you put in there, I felt like it was a huge plot twist. Did you know that was coming, or did it kind of morph as the story unfolded between the two of them?
That was one of the first scenes I wrote. So I knew it was coming the whole time.
Wow.
I yeah, I knew I knew exactly where it was, what it was, how, everything about it. And my first draft of the plot twist was a little bit different. I mean, it was the same concept, but there were more people involved and things like that. And in the end, it was just, I took all that away. Yeah, I was like, this is the point I'm getting to in this story.
It was I mean, I didn't read it before the other draft you had with it the other way, but the way you had it was so profound and like raw and real because a lot of the time for myself, I suffer from depression and a lot of other like mental health things. You mask it, you walk it alone, you don't show it. And
Right.
so it
Right.
was like when that scene happened, it was just like, whoa, it was so much more probably impactful, I feel, as the reader and living that life, that there weren't others in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and writing scenes like that, look, I'm a sobbing mess half the time when I'm writing. Because especially when you get to those scenes, they're hard, and even when you go back and visit them over and over and over again, you get a little more callous to it. You don't cry every time you work on the scene, but it's going to hit hard when you do get emotional every time you work on a scene. And that's one of the scenes that I couldn't go back and work on a lot because I was like, just for my own mental health,
yeah.
I have to focus on happier times and everything else. But it is heavy. The story's heavy, but I try to weave levity through my books to kind of balance as much as I can. I'm not a rom-com writer at all by any means, but I at least try to have some light moments, some kind of funny moments to balance out those really heavy scenes like that.
Yeah. Did you, besides the emotional wear and tear of writing it, did you struggle at all with when you were bringing it forward to like readers with it being so traumatic and like emotionally heavy?
I did. I did. My developmental editor, Melissa, bless her heart, I told her, it's like, you dragged me. She was dragging me through this because I would just have so much doubt about it, especially being from the character's perspective the character that it's happening to. I was like, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to, I don't know if readers are going to be okay with this. And I try to take a lot of care when I write these stories. And I have to remind myself that at the end of the draft, early readers, sensitivity readers, authenticity, they exist for a reason. So don't beat myself up the whole process. Just wait until see what they say. But I do beat myself up the whole time thinking like, this is too far. This is too much,
Yeah.
because there's, when you think about mental health struggles and you put it out there on paper in the real world, people see gray area, and I didn't want it to come across that way. I know a lot of readers said, like in the beginning, there was questionable activity or questionable behavior, but it was all explained as you go on. And so I'm glad that came across.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, it added, and it also, I feel like for people that maybe don't have the mental health issues, like they have, a good mental health,
Yeah,
reading that is enlightening, because then if someone in their life has something like that, then they maybe will be kinder or not so rough with them and more understanding, because
exactly.
the brain works differently when you are
Yeah,
dealing with those kind of struggles.
right. Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing that, I could research. I don't know that I have like perfect no mental health. I think everyone has their own struggles.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, and we look at things differently. So even writing this story, even though I couldn't personally relate and I had to do a lot of research, you know, to build this character in a very realistic way and taking bits and pieces of people that I do know, and behaviors and even some of my own behaviors that I have with my Tourette syndrome, like I kind of pushed all that into the book, and then I had to go back through and say, okay, make it make sense, because you can't have everything, right? You can't have all the challenges and all the struggles. You have to make it realistic if you're trying to send a message. So that's what I really tried to do without, I didn't want to be over the top with it. I didn't want to excuse behaviors and just write it off as a mental health challenge. There had to be resolution, and we,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
that was my,
really liked that, because, like, I've read some books where it's like they're not unhinged, but they're unhinged and they just aren't fully there, but the person's just like, okay, whatever, it's fine. And then they go on and stay together. And I'm just like, wait, what? I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, I get that you're accepting and unconditionally loving this person, but they really need therapy
yes.
and to be helped. And I loved that you had that and like showed that it's not anything to be like judgmental about, or like you're less than, or that you're like somehow weak because you can't handle your issues on your own. Like I loved that you showed that, a big chunk of that in this book, like, and made it normal, and like everybody's like on board with it.
Yeah, and by the time I got to that point, so there was a point where I finished the draft and I had stopped. I was stopped exactly where you said, where it's like, okay, we're fine, let's the end, without the help and everything that was shown in the end. And again, my developmental editor was like, this isn't done. This isn't done. For me, it wasn't about not showing it. It was just like I was so drained from writing the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, fine, I'll finish the book. So I went on and wrote the ending, which I'm so glad that she pushed me, was like, just keep going, because um, that's the one part the readers have loved the most, is that last 20%.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, it's just, they love it. And it makes me feel so good for putting in that extra work to
Yeah.
show them healing, as much as healing as you can get.
Exactly. And that they kept going with it. Like it didn't just stop. It was like that embraced in their life, because it doesn't go away. I mean, it's always there. You always can fall back into patterns. Like it's, if you have a stressful time or different things like that. Like I loved that it carried through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love it.
Thank
It's just
you.
so good. It's just so so good. So have you always wanted to be a writer, or how did this come about?
I went to college to be a writer. I had not really haven't written anything in my life, but I love telling stories. I love coming up with stories, especially like anything with a necessarily romance, but just something that felt romantic, if that makes sense. And in college, I went through, I had to take all these literature classes in order to get an English degree. You have, even creative writing, you have to take literature classes. And I was really struggling with the reading. It's like I had never before then read for fun. Just the assigned reading in school. And it wasn't until college that I read my first book that I related to. And then it would just took off from there on my reading journey. But yeah, that was when and then it changed, of course, because it really affected my writing once I started reading. Because then I was like, oh, wow, I can actually, I mean, it improved tremendously, but didn't have the confidence back then to really go for it. That's why it took me so long. That's why I'm
Yeah.
doing it now or never.
So what was the change that made you say, no, I'm doing it? We're doing it.
You know, After college, and I think this is pretty common, is family. I was already a parent in college. I was a teen mom. So I had my little roommate in college, and I just wanted to get through it. And then, you've got to live your life. You've got to work and everything else. And back then, this was before self-publishing was a thing. So when you don't have the confidence, you're not going to put a book out there and just get rejection letter after rejection letter. So I just started many books over the years, and then finally I just decided, okay, I'm done. My kids are out of the house and I'm going to go for it. Why not?
Great. That's really, really great. Let me go down here. So have you been celebrating your milestone?
By starting the next thing. Honestly, if we were still in the city, we would probably go out and celebrate and do things, but we live pretty rural, remote place. So I could, I guess, go outside and take a walk and play with the dogs. But my husband, he just tells everybody, and he buys me flowers that kind of match the book cover and everything else. But for me, I think internally I celebrate a lot, but I'm not a big like showy person on the
Yeah.
outside.
That's great though. That's so sweet that he does that.
He's
That's
so
great.
sweet.
I love when the spouses are super supportive and like rooting. I think that's so great, because you need
Yeah.
that. You need that person in your corner to like
You do.
keep
And
you momentum.
I told him, I was like, I don't want anyone to know I'm writing because when you start writing, especially in the romance genre, when you're writing spicy romance, you kind of it's a scary move.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just going to hide this from my friends and family. But when you have someone like my husband that just tells everybody, then like, what's the point? There's
Yeah.
no getting
That's so
around it.
great. Like that's my thought too, because I'd be like mortified. I'm like, I don't no, 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 I don't want her to read anything. So I'm like the same way. I'm like, don't tell anybody I'm writing.
Yeah, the worst call you can get is your mom calling and saying, "I bought your book." And I'm like, "Please don't read a book. My mother has never read a book a day in her life. Why are you buying my book?" Don't.
You're like, no, don't do that.
Like, thank you for the support, but put the book in the
Just put it on your shelf for
bathroom.
like a trophy and leave
Yeah,
it there. Don't crack the
exactly.
spine. I love that. So this is more of a fun question. So when you're writing, what is your favorite beverage and snack?
I'm a coffee drinker. I will drink coffee all day long. It's probably not the best thing because I know I need more water and I have to remind myself to drink water. But I have started drinking more like teas and stuff at night, especially. But coffee, I've always been a coffee drinker since I was a kid. So if people don't believe it's an addiction, it is.
Yeah.
But and my snack, I'm a cookies are my thing. I will eat all the cookies in the house if they exist. And if I get stuck on a sentence, like, or if I can't even think, if I'm stuck on any spot, I
Mhm.
walk to the kitchen to think. That's where I go to kind of like, get out of my head and reset. And the kitchen has the cookies. So it's not a good situation. So I have to stop buying cookies and
Uh-huh.
find something else to do.
Cookies are great though. That's a good quick
Yeah.
like small little
Yes,
bit of sugar.
and you can justify it by buying like the thin cookies
Yeah.
and then you can eat them all day long and you don't feel guilty.
I talked to one author. She lives in the UK and she was so funny because she had like a similar, I think it was like a little like twisty, sugary pretzel pastry type thing. But
Yeah.
she was like her mom, she said that her husband, and if she was at her mom's writing, like she'd go to help her mom take care of their family, grandparents. They would hide them from her and like only give them to her when she like finished a certain amount of words. And I was like, that's so funny.
I mean, a reward is good. If I change the mindset to that will be my reward if I finish this scene or if I finish like 5 paragraphs or whatever else. But yeah, if they're there, I'm going to eat them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. It's like it's just temptation and then you just
It
want it.
is.
So it just is what it definitely is that. So do you have a moment that you can recall during this journey that you felt really proud?
When I typed the end on the first book, I sat right here and just tears streaming down my face. And it was right when my husband walked in from work. And I turned around and he was like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I was like, "I finished." And we looked at each other and he was celebrating. And I was like, "Oh my God, I have to write the epilogue." So my moment of like big pride was like, "Oh my gosh, I still have to write." But I did feel really proud writing it because, like I said, I started several books over the years, most of them historical fiction, believe it or not. And so finishing one was just like the proudest moment. I'm
Are
a
you going to
cry.
go back? Yeah, that's great. Sorry. I was going to ask, are you with the, since you have other books, are you going to go back and finish those or just go forward?
No, I don't know. I like history and there's specific points in history that I've always just really been not fascinated, I don't think is the right word to use, but just had a lot of interest in. And I think really more it's about just human condition is really what it comes down to. So once I realized that I can really write romance, which I told you I've always loved like romantic type things and human condition in one book, I was like, maybe this is the genre for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, have you ever experienced writer's block?
I did several times in Run to Me. just because I was caged in by the outline, and I would go days. I think at one point I went a couple of weeks without writing a word, and I couldn't figure it out. I tried everything and I could not figure out what was stopping me. But I pushed through and I got the book done, and after, like I said, after publication, I figured it out. It was the outline. I cannot outline. um my brain just says, oh, there's a wall, do not pass, you can't pass this, so if you take away that wall or the rules or the box, then I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So do you have anything that's like your writing kryptonite?
My writing kryptonite, um yeah, I would think that's the same thing. My outline that completely derails me because I'm a pretty focused person. Like, I can sit down and just like hyper focus on something for a very long time. And I mean, hours and hours and hours doing something. I do a lot of puzzles and jigsaw puzzles, and then it's like 4 hours later. So if I'm on a roll, I'm good. Like, nothing derails me. But if there's a moment where it's usually in my own brain where I have this like, can I write that? Can I say that? And then I just take a dive, and then I start asking everybody I know like feedback, and they're like, just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Well, that's good to push through it and not let it like fully stop you.
Yeah.
That's good. So does writing energize you or does it make you tired?
It energizes me, and I am a night owl, so I usually write the most at night, and I find like the more I can just fall into the story and let it happen, then all of a sudden it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still wide awake and going. So it definitely energizes me, and like yesterday, I did a lot of word yesterday, and I had to just stop myself because at some point I think that who knows what you're even putting on the page.
Yeah.
If you just keep going, it's almost like the words are just happening without any control. And so I think it's okay to stop yourself, even when you're at a high energetic point, and come back to it the next day. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great though. It's kind of like the reverse of like the book readers where we're like just one more chapter in the middle of
Yes.
the night. You're like just one more chapter. I'm writing one more chapter. So it's like the
Well, and
opposite.
it's exactly like that's how I am as a reader. I will devour the book. I'm like, I can read this, but I will look on my Kindle at the time it takes to read. And I'm like, watch me beat this.
Yeah.
I'm not putting this down if it's really good. And I'm the same with writing. I'm like, I don't want to walk away from it. I want to just keep going.
Yeah.
Like I said, at some point you have to just stop yourself and be like, but is it any good?
Yes.
What are you even saying on the page now?
Yeah. And then when you walk away and you come back, it probably gives you like a new perspective of the scene or like a fresh set of eyes, kind
It
of.
does. Yeah, it definitely does. And I've seen a lot of different advice that says like stop writing for the day mid sentence, or mid scene or mid, and I haven't tried that yet because I can't not finish a sentence.
Yeah.
But I've seen so much different advice on where to stop so that you can pick up the next day. And for me, it's just, even if I stop mid scene one day, the next day, I'm a mood writer. So if I'm not in the mood to finish that scene, I'm going to move on to a different one.
Yeah. So you hop around in the storyline and write chapters out of order.
I try to stick in the same, at least half of the book when I hop around, because I made the mistake, like I told you, for Run to Me, I wrote the plot twist scene, like the very first scene I wrote. And then I started to play around writing other scenes in that part of the book. And I was like, this isn't going to work because I need to write chapter one and just start there and then move forward. So I ended up cutting a lot of the stuff that I wasted time writing because it didn't make sense anymore, except the plot twist. So now I've learned that writing the second half of the book first doesn't do me any favors.
So when you, yeah, it is. It definitely is. I mean, it gets you like the momentum probably to go back and go forward.
Yeah.
Did the characters come to you like really loud or did you have to kind of like develop them?
They came to me so easily. When I wrote, because they're both in the first book, and when I wrote the first book, especially Maisie's character, I knew like the song inspiration was all her. Just her. She was one of my earliest developed characters for book one. Like I knew what her story was going to be, and what her arc was going to be. And for Jensen, I knew that he was going to have his own struggles in Runs Me, and trying to leave little breadcrumbs in the first book. I don't know that they translated all the way because I think some people were surprised. And but I knew that I knew the dynamic between the two, like from the very beginning of even writing the first book.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, it did surprise me, but it was better because, like I said earlier, like people that have mental health, a lot of time they feel like guilt or like shame for it,
Yes.
and so they
Right.
mask. And
Exactly.
so that was very authentic that you did
Yeah.
it that way, because
Yeah.
otherwise it would have, yeah,
Yeah, I wanted the story to unfold and progress naturally. That's why, I mean, the timeline of the book I think is like from the beginning, from chapter 1 until that then is like 9 months or so, and I didn't want there to be just like a falling off the cliff kind of decline. I wanted to show a steady, I wanted it to be as natural as possible, so that yes, while it was still kind of shocking, it wasn't like surprising. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's so, and that was one of my struggles of like where and when, like how long, and because you can't be like, "Hi, I'm here and I'm great and I'm happy," and then all of a sudden, bam. You have to show someone kind of leaking those little,
yeah. You definitely showed the cracks really well, like at the festival, and then in the interactions between the
yeah,
two of them, and even the interactions with him and his friends, the check-in and with them, their friendship. It was just like it was the little fractures, you could see them forming.
yeah. One of my big things is I want to make sure I read a lot of dialogue and body language. Those are the two human forms of communication for the most part.
Yeah,
And so writing those to really to let you know like how he's feeling in a moment, or even how Maisie's feeling in a moment, even in the narrative, just like the stress and the urge to self-soothe or act out or whatever it may be in a scene. I try my best to really convey that on the page, to make the reader feel it through body language and dialogue as
yeah,
much as I could.
yeah. It definitely translated that for sure. So if you could go back in time and a time machine and talk to your younger writing self, would there be anything you'd tell yourself knowing what you know now?
Probably not to be afraid, just to go for it, or at least to really learn the craft, like make the effort, because I think discovering and putting more effort into the learning to write, reading things and seeing what other people are doing, and I think help build the confidence now for me to go for it, because back then I was like a cocky little college kid who never read a book as a child for fun. And we just didn't have books in my home growing up. So when I started reading, I was like, okay, I obviously don't know how to really write a fiction creative story. So I tell my younger self to just like learn it and build the confidence.
So what was one of the first books that you read in college that really stuck with you?
I had I can't remember what fiction class. We had to take a certain amount of literature hours, right, to
Mm-hmm.
get the degree. And so there was like a choices for electives. And I had already gone through all of the old English stuff and all the stuff that I just dreaded. But in this one course, there was a book, The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor. I think there was a TV movie made of this. That was the first book. It was one of our signed readings. And that was the first book I've ever read that I related and that clicked. And I was like, so this is what reading is. So that kind of like sent me off on, that's the book that sent me to a bookstore to buy my first book ever. I was like 21 years old. But I just related not necessarily to the characters' experiences that they were going through, but just the environment they were in, some of the struggles they were having, the because I was at a time in my life where I was in the same sort of kind of position, and so I just related. It's a series of short stories, and I highly recommend it. But yeah, that was the first book that I read that got me into reading.
Oh, that's great. That's really, really great. So what is the most difficult thing about writing for you?
The first draft, for sure, because I question myself constantly. So just getting it done, just believing in myself and realizing the first draft is not the final draft. That's my biggest hurdle. I want the first draft to be perfect, and I have to get past that and just let it be a mess and knowing I can come back and clean it up later.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what's your most favorite part about
I
writing?
was going to say the cleanup is fun for me. I like to edit. I don't mind editing. I don't mind proofreading, even though by the time I'm proofreading, I've read it so many times that the words and the punctuation just are blurs. But all of those things in the end, the cleanup and just making it into that final product,
Mhm.
that's the fun. That's the funnest part for me.
So do you love the red pen?
I love the red pen. Both books, I put an Instagram story up. I was like, I got my red pen with a picture of it laying there. Like, I love the red pen.
I love that. I've heard a few authors that love that part of it. A lot of them don't, but some of them, and they're like, I love cutting scenes. I'm like, really? That would be like gutting to me because I'm like, I took time to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely gutting. Like, cutting anything is really, really hard. But I really like just the editing process of moving things around to work on the flow and to make sure that I have editors that do that, but I'd like to do it first.
Yeah.
And then when I get it back, I'm like, okay, yeah, the editing, I think, is just, it's a lot of fun for me.
Well, that's really great. So what is your most difficult scenes to write?
Those emotional ones, the emotional ones, they're I spend the most time on those, and the very first, like, spicy scene. I will go back to that first spicy scene a million times because it's, for me, it's not only, a pivotal point in the story or moment, a smutty moment or anything like that. I try to make it very plot oriented.
Yeah.
It's a plot turning moment. And I spend a lot of time on those and then always go back to those heavy emotional scenes just because I want them to be so clean and perfect as I can get them, and I look at every word, every thought, every action and try to really make it authentic and not offensive to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So then on the flip side, what is your favorite scene to write?
My favorite scenes to write are, I really like writing some of the group scenes when there's a lot of characters around. It's a challenge, and I think that's why I like it. It's a challenge because when you've got a lot of people in the room, knowing who's talking and how they all interact with each other and everything, I enjoy that. But I
Yeah.
also do enjoy writing those emotional scenes because that's what I'm writing the books for. And because if I am weeping at the end of my keyboard, then I know that it's going to come across to the
Yeah.
reader.
Yeah, that's for sure. I love group scenes, like the pool scene. I love that. Like
Yeah,
the banter and then like the just all of the like high energy
yeah,
and like them giving each other crap around, poking at each other. I think that's so great. It makes it real. It makes you
yeah.
feel like it's really a group of friends in a real place and you're there.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's one of my goals is to, because there are those moments where there's heavy moments and happy moments and then the spicy moments, and structuring all those together in one book is a challenge in itself because you don't want anything jarring. You don't want to have like the plot twist scene and you turn right around and you have like the pool scene right behind it. That would just, the reader would be like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So structuring all of that is a challenge that I enjoy doing, but it's also kind of stressful, because you want it to flow like a human, like human life. You know, we wake up one in the morning, we feel a certain way, something happens to ruin our day, but we go on, put on a smile. Like these are real things, and I want it to come across that way and not feel, you know, icky or out of sequence, or you know, I want to really focus on trying to get it to flow the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, which of your MCs is your favorite? Or can you pick one? That might like be asking about your like pick your favorite kid.
I don't know. I really, I think, I think Jensen probably is my favorite. You know, I haven't finished writing Brody yet. I know who Brody is in my head, 100%. But Jensen's just so, he's so supportive. And I think that's what I really like. But despite everything else going on in his, you know, that he has going on, he's so supportive of Maisie. And I just can't, when you have a man that in my head looks like him and is as supportive as he is, I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like our wish list for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So out of all of your characters, which one is most like you?
Lucy is actually most like me. I am, well, okay. Lucy's personality is most like me. I wrote a novella that if people that subscribe to my newsletter can get the novella, and it's Lucy and Rock's prequel story. And that was my sort of outlet to be, you know, to put my kind of my personality on the page through Lucy. So that was, it was very cathartic because
Oh, I want to read it.
she has some of the same sort of things that I deal with, and it was nice to be able to put that into a character.
Yeah, I love her. I want to go read that
Yeah,
one. I
she's a
signed up
lot
for
of
your
fun.
newsletter, so I have to see. I'll have to see if I got it. I'll have to go look. So, what's your favorite tropes to read, and then what's your favorite tropes to write?
Oh my gosh, I have trouble picking a favorite trope to read because I really do read all of them. And I do like a good enemies to lovers story. And I don't know why. It's the tension. If an author gets me with that kind of dynamic and that tension in the beginning, I'm just sold. My favorite to write, well, I've only done so far this Second Chance and Childhood Friends to Lovers, but and both of those I really enjoyed because you have history with the characters, you know, and you get to bring up things from before, and that's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So, have there been any tropes that you want to write that you haven't had a chance to yet?
I would love to write a I know it's controversial, surprise pregnancy or secret baby trope. Um Maybe one day, because I do like reading them. But again, I like reading everything. So I don't, you know, everybody has their things and I just like it all.
Love those. Those are like my top three. Like
Yeah.
so step sibling when they're adults and they're not, they weren't growing up together. That's like a taboo trope, but I've read a
Yes.
few that are really, really good. And then
Yes.
secret
Exactly.
pregnancy, and then the friends to lovers, like the
Yeah.
ones that everybody's like, oh, I hate those. I'm like, I love them. What are you talking about?
I love the friends to lovers dynamic because they already know so much about each other. And then you get
Yeah,
to see how much they like really paid attention to each other as it comes out. Yeah, I read everything. I read everything from cozy romance to dark romance to I read it all.
yeah,
And so I'm never going to be that person that judges someone else for what they like or not because I will read everything.
yeah. I'm very much like that, and I'm a mood reader, but I kind of get fixated in a genre. So like right now, I'm in
Yeah.
a lot of contemporary romance. I have a few dark romances that I've read, and then I go through like months of just fantasy books where that's all I'm reading is
Yeah.
fantasy. So
Yeah, I've
it's
done the same. I went through like a billionaire series for like 2 months. like in 2023. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I think I read all the billionaires. There are no more billionaires.
Yes, yes. I definitely fixate. That's for sure. That's really, really me for sure. So when you're writing, how do you set up your day? Do you like have a certain number of chapters or scenes or word count that you work towards?
I don't. I actually just downloaded a word count tracking app not too long ago, and I kept forgetting to use it. But now I'm trying to remember to use it, just mostly just because I know that I want to get to the end goal and it's kind of fun to have a measurement. But
Hmm.
I don't personally have a goal when I sit down every day. I just want to put words on the page. So if I do 500 words, 3,000 words the next day, progress is progress. Especially after what I went through with Run to Me. At this point, I'm like, 200 words is a good day.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So how long does it take you to finish a book once you begin it to like when we get it?
Well, the first book was pretty quick. When I wrote All I Want, I didn't know, and I didn't even know Bookstagram existed, honestly. I read so much and had no clue that the bookish world was even out there. And so I joined at the end of 2023 after I had my draft done of the first book. And because I wrote a book, now what?
Yeah,
Now where do I go? So I went to Facebook and I was like, kept seeing people talking about Instagram. So I went to Instagram and I was like, where have I been? I know where I've been. I've been reading on my couch like all the
yeah,
time. So I quickly found all the team that I needed to get the first book out there, and that one was published April 30th of last year. I started drafting that book at the end of August of 23 and published it on April 30th of 24. So it was pretty quick turnaround. Same with Run to Me. I had bits and pieces of Run to Me done throughout while I was writing book one, but really started focusing on it in March of last year and then the December publication. I mean, 8 months
yeah.
ish.
That's still really fast, I feel like.
I feel like it's fast, so I know a lot of authors write a lot faster than me, and that is okay because I think some people just the thoughts just come quicker. Mine don't. So
Yeah. I had a quote that I heard from someone else and they said, grow your own way. And I keep saying that to myself because I'm always, we're always comparing to other people. And I'm like,
right, yeah, yeah. I think I think that slows you down and holds you back when you think you have to write like someone else does. When I see authors that give reading advice that say, this is what I do, but everyone is different, I'm like, thank you for adding on that,
yeah,
because there is no one right way to do anything in life. So I like to just look inward and be like, what works for me and what doesn't, and focus on that and not try to
exactly.
compare myself to others.
Yeah, exactly. So did you enjoy the process of designing the covers for the books?
No. I don't consider myself an artsy person,
Mhm.
and I get very frustrated. Because I don't, it requires a lot of patience and there's just a lot of parts. The end product I'm very happy with and proud of, but the process, no, I didn't
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah. No, they're beautiful covers. I always like to ask because some people love that process and other people are like, oh, it's so daunting. I don't like
It's
it.
very daunting. I colors. I have an author friend that I complain to all the time. I'm like, there's a reason everything in my closet is black because colors, just overwhelm me because there's too many options. So I need you to tell me what colors to use and then I'll go put it together. But if I have to choose things, I get very overwhelmed by it. And I think that's the biggest part of it. The design, like the concept, the Run to Me cover with the bird. Actually, I had the bird and the colors and everything up on my screen before book one's cover was even thought of. Like I knew the significance of the bird and everything that would be my cover object early on. So that's
Yeah.
fun. The concept is fun. Creating the concept of the cover, but actually doing the cover, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more of the artsy side, so I thrive in that.
I admire it because that is not how I want to spend my time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your writing is very poetic, so you have it in the other ways of the other arts and
Thank
stuff.
you.
So you're still in the arts because you're a writer, so you're an artist. So you have it just in a different.
Just don't make me use colors.
Yes. So, what in your opinion makes a great story?
I think a great story is one that's like as authentic as possible. Don't get me wrong. I like a good escape story. I like a good story that takes me on a journey and a ride that's not realistic at all. And just, the dreamy kind of fantastical stories. I like those. But what gets me even in those is just human condition. I think if you tell a story about human condition, because at our core, we all have the same, at our core, we're all the same. So everything we can relate. And if a story makes me relate on any level, I'm going to enjoy the story. It doesn't matter what the location is or what the, the, hurdles that the characters are facing, any of that stuff. If I can relate with one of the characters or relate to one of the struggles they're going through, then I'm sold. I'm going to keep
Mhm.
reading.
Yeah. No,
I,
that's true. That's
I
very
just
true.
and that goes back to this writing about my initial start of historical fiction, like being always wanting to write historical fiction, was the human condition, because we've seen it, we've seen the history, we have the proof, we know what people went through. And so I try to write that more present day in my contemporary romance, because you know it's what people are going through now, and it's life is human condition, and how we live our day-to-day lives, but we present ourselves to the world in other ways, because you never know what's going on behind somebody's, you know within somebody's closed doors. You just never know.
Yes, exactly. That is so, so true. So, what is the most surprising thing you've learned for yourself during this writing journey?
I surprised myself mostly with being able to put myself out there. Even doing something like this is huge for me. Just because of my own, everybody has their own struggles and insecurities, and I have mine. But with my Tourette syndrome, I try to really not put myself out there, and also my impulsive speech and all those things that I have, it's really hard to communicate. So building a community in an environment like social media, where you don't have tone and inflection and things like that, and connecting with people and being able to do it successfully, because I've made good friends in the book community, has been very surprising for me. So I'm really good. I'm better face to face, because people, you can convey what you mean through tone and everything else. But on social media, that's been the most surprising for me about how I've been able to use it.
Yeah, for sure. There are pockets that aren't, but for a whole, the community is like super accepting and supportive, and
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
so
try
I
to
love.
stay, I love the positivity. Anytime there's positive messages, I'll stop scrolling, I'll read them, I like them and everything else. And I try to surround myself with positivity, and because I will absorb negativity like no one's business. And so I know I have to stay away from it, because and it's not that I spin it around and spit it back out. I just absorb it and shut down. So
Yes.
I have to just focus on the positive bookish people out there. There's a lot of them, so many more than the negative.
Yeah,
And so
for
those
sure.
are the ones I try to give my attention to.
Yeah, I'm the same way for sure. So, who are some of the authors that you're reading or books you're reading now that you really like?
I haven't been able to do a lot of reading in the past year. I read so much before I started writing Run to Me. Run to Me really slowed down my own reading. My TBR is like miles high. But some of the authors that I like to read are, gosh, they're all over the place. They really are. A rom-com series that I really like, that's actually like a compilation from four different authors. And I won't name all their names, but I like those types of authors and books that can make me laugh. And then I'll turn around and read something like Jane Washington's Ironside series. That's, it's a white shoes. I don't even know if it's, I don't know. I don't think it's fantasy. Maybe it's fantasy. I'm not sure, but like I'm all over the place. And I have so many series, good series that I need to finish. But right now, my 2025 TBR is topped by indie authors. I'm really trying to focus more on supporting my fellow up and coming authors, because we, there's so many good books, and whatever I can get out there, I'm going to get out there.
Yeah.
I'll do my part because there's a lot of stories that deserve to be heard. New
Yeah,
stories.
there's so many. There's so many good ones, and even though there's so many, they're all different. That's what I love about it, is that
All
they're
different.
so different.
Yeah. There's so many there's so many ways to tell the same basic kind of premise, and that's what makes each story unique. And I think it's really hard to copy somebody because everyone has a spin on something. So I'll read them all.
Yeah.
Give me a Cinderella retelling, I'm going to read every single one of them.
Yep. That's me too. That's me too. So, what is your most favorite part about being a writer?
I like being able to get this. I like the freedom of being able to get everything out of my head and onto the page. Not everything makes it to the final book because my editors are like, you can't put that on the page. But to me, it's cathartic because I have impulsive speech. I can just say whatever I want to say in someone else's voice and put it on the page. So that's like my favorite part, is just being able, it's very therapeutic, to just write whatever I want to write. And I'm much more prolific in the writing than what I actually put out there, because sometimes I'll just go on tangents, and it's nice.
Ah,
It's nice to be
it's
able to do
it's
that.
like a mind dump.
It's a mind dump, and then I immediately delete it and I feel better.
Yeah, that's great. So do you read reviews that you have for the books, or do you avoid them?
I don't anymore. I will read, if someone tags me in a review, and I'll just peek and I'm like, is it going to be a good one? And then I'll read it and comment, because they take the time. If they take the time to go out there and put it on social media and everything else, I'm going to look at it. But like the review sites, I try to stay away from those, because I knew early on after the first book, I can't even remember. It was actually not even a poorly rated one, but it had criticism in it that really was like a personal thing, not towards the book, but I think it was just, everybody brings a different perspective when they read a story. And it's too easy to take those personal, or to want to reach out and be like, are we reading the same book? Kind of thing. So I just decided that's not a good place for me to be mentally, so I just stay away.
So have you changed anything in your process from publishing the first book to publishing the second book? And then are you going to change anything going forward?
Well, yeah, I learned what not to do in the second book, obviously with the outlining. So I'm not doing that anymore for sure. But, I, like said about coming into this after I had the draft finished and not knowing what to do next, I scrambled. I scrambled for editors. I scrambled for, I didn't know that you had to have all these services booked out plenty of time in advance. And I'm not patient person. I want to write the book today. I want to publish it tomorrow. But but I've learned that I have to slow down. Like, slowing down is best for me. It's best for everyone around me. And also book things out and make sure that I've got, because then I don't want to be up against the wire and stressing out because I don't have, my editors says, "Oh no, I'm all booked up. You should have called me sooner." So all those lessons were learned. So I know what
Yeah.
to do now going forward.
Yeah. So can we, without spoiling anything, Brody, is he coming soon?
I don't have a release date to announce yet. It's not too far away. Like I'm writing this book as fast as I did the first one, so that's good.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited about Brody and Ainsley, and I really like writing their characters and their dynamic. I think it's
Yes.
going to be fun, but it's also going to be surprising that people are.
They're so mysterious. Like she was so, I was like, what is this girl's deal in the book? And I'm like, I need to know.
So mysterious. But that's the good thing about them is that I know I've set up, there's a baseline for all the characters, and I've fed those into the even Brody and Ainsley into books 1 and 2, the mysteries and the little habits and little things that they do. So now I'm just getting to just expand on all of that in their own book. It's a lot of fun.
Is he the last one, or will there be more
He's the
characters
last
from the
one.
series?
He's the last one. I'm pretty sure that's going to be full novel, but have a novella in mind for a side character, and I cannot say the name because then people will hold me to it big time. Um, but yeah, that would probably be the last part of the Runaway Heart series, is that final novella.
Yeah. Well, I definitely love seeing all the characters, his guy friends for sure. I hope they
Yes.
all have a book. Like, I hope every single one of them gets something because I just love that so much. So with you having a background in writing, do you do anything now to, like you were talking about earlier, about like improving the craft or honing your skills?
Well, I write a lot for my day job, but it's corporate stuff. And so I'm trying to really focus on making it less corporate-y.
Mm-hmm.
I try to, even if I'm working, even if it's within my own book, I'll look at a paragraph and rewrite it and try to make it feel more natural and more descriptive and everything. I feel like descriptive writing is my challenge, so I try to do more of that. I think I have the emotional part down. I want to work more on the descriptive part. I don't need to just describe in detail every scene because that's just not the kind of writer I am, to describe like every room, all the details of the room, and I'm okay with that. The writers who can do that, I commend them, because that's just not what's in my head. But I try to do exercises where I can use more descriptive detail in my writing, at least to just sort of, there's just to put the aesthetic and the aura and the essence there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's really great. So, is there something unique or quirky that we maybe don't know about you, or a hobby that you have?
Well, I do puzzles. I do crosswords, word searches, jigsaws, and I have since I was a kid. That's really it. I like to garden, but I have what I call a black thumb. Everything I plant just shrivels up and dies. I love the process of planting the stuff. I just can't keep it alive. That's it. And then quirky, I don't know that I have any quirks. I'm sure I do, but I can't identify my own quirks.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's fun. I'm the same way. I love the idea and the process of gardening, and then I kill them.
Yeah.
I just murder them somehow. So, what do you do after you finish to unwind? Do you do that, or do you just jump right into the next one?
I've just been jumping right in. This one, after Run to Me published, I went to Texas for a week to be with family and all that. So I didn't write. Actually spent that time thinking about what had changed. I used that week to like figure out like what did I do different that was really slowing me down. So that was like a learning week. But I try to take some time off and just read, or just spend more time. I can't spend more time with family. We don't have any where we live. They're all in Texas, but just more phone calls and catching up because they won't hear from me for weeks. And so I try to just reconnect and, do something that I enjoy outside of the bookish world, and hopefully get better for that. I'm trying to have more intent going into 2025 about doing things for myself, enjoying the things that I've set aside because I'm writing all the time.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really great. So, plans, we have Brody's story coming out, and you said the novellas. Plans for any other future books? Are you going to be branching out and doing something new?
I am announcing another series later on in the year, I'll be announcing another series. It's another 3-book series, still romance, still contemporary romance that I'm really excited about. I won't give anything away, but that's coming. And then I also have a standalone. I was writing a book. I was like 70,000 words into a book when the idea for All I Want hit me, and I immediately abandoned and wrote All I Want because I had to write it. I couldn't get it out of my head. The whole story was in my head. So I'm going to go back and finish that. Probably after I'm done with Brody and Ainsley's story, I'll finish that standalone. So it's a
Nice.
summer lake romance. So hopefully, if I can get it out in the summertime, that'll be good timing.
That'll be great. I'm excited. I'm excited for all the new books I get to read. I love that. So, my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away from after finishing your book?
I think that the message of my books is just on my shirt. Be kind, because everybody, we all have our issues and our struggles and our everybody has something that they're going through. And at the end of the book, I would love for readers to think, wow, I didn't know that someone could feel that or do that or think that or whatever else. And also really big about how people respond and react to things, because even writing my books, someone may read it and be like, well, that's not how I would have reacted to that at all. I would have done something totally different. And that's the point. Like, it's opening your mind to understand, okay, but everyone's not me, so there are different ways. We all handle things in different ways. For the most part, because these are HEA books, that despite all that, despite all the struggles, there is love in the end.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
great.
message.
I love that. That's a good message. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and chatting about your books. They're amazing, and I'm really grateful that you came on. I wrote you right after I wrote my post, and I was probably like word vomit for sure. But I just had to tell you like everything that I felt after finishing it because
Loved
it just
it.
touched me.
I'm such a crybaby. I mean, I really am. And I cry, and it's always happy tears or when I'm passionate. Your message to me, just I was just crying. It just made me feel so good. I was like, this is why I write. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
So I linked her information below where you can find her on Instagram and her books. Be sure to check them out. They are great reads, but have tissue. As my disclaimer, have the tissue because it will make you cry. They will make you laugh, swoony moments, and just like deep thoughts and maybe even a paradigm shift for your thinking. So definitely check her out. She's a great writer. And please join me next time as we get another look behind the book.
Thank you. Bye.